The night Adrian Vale walked away from a $100 million deal to answer his daughter's phone call, the entire ballroom went silent. Investors stared, cameras flashed, and somewhere in the back of that glittering room, a woman nobody had ever noticed before felt her heart crack open for the first time in 30 years. This is the story of a billionaire who chose differently, a poor woman who had stopped believing in choices, and the little girl who taught them both what it really means to stay. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. And if it moves you, hit that like button. Now, let's begin. The Silver Crest Grand Hotel didn't just host events. It devoured them. Every surface gleamed under calculated lighting, every corner staged for photographs that would appear in tomorrow's business sections. The Winter Gala was the kind of party where fortunes shifted between champagne glasses, where a handshake in the right hallway could move markets by morning. Adrian Vale stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching snow begin to fall over the city, and wanted nothing more than to be anywhere else. He was 32, though most people guessed older, the kind of tired that comes from raising a child alone while running an empire that employed 4,000 people. His suit was custom-tailored, his watch worth more than most cars, but his tie was slightly crooked because Mia had insisted on helping him get dressed before the nanny arrived. "Mr. Vale, we really need your answer on the Singapore expansion." Adrian turned. Charles Mortimer, lead investor on the Southeast Asia deal, stood with two other executives whose names Adrian had already forgotten. They all had the same hungry look, the same polished desperation. "The projections are strong," Mortimer continued, stepping closer. "If we move now, we beat Hendrick Corp to market. But we need your commitment tonight. The window closes at midnight." Adrian's phone vibrated in his pocket. He knew without looking it was Mia. She always called at 8:15, exactly halfway through her bedtime routine. "Excuse me," Adrian said. Mortimer blinked. "I'm sorry? I need to take this call." "Mr. Vale, we're discussing a $100 million. Adrian was already walking toward the balcony, phone to his ear. Behind him, he heard Mortimer's frustrated exhale, the murmur of confusion from the other executives. He didn't care. "Hey, Butterfly. Daddy, Mrs. Chen says I have to finish my carrots, but they taste like sadness." Adrian smiled despite himself, pushing through the balcony doors into the cold night air. "Sadness has a taste?" "Yes, orange and squishy." "What if you pretend there's something else?" "Like what?" "Treasure sticks from a dragon's garden." There was a pause. Adrian could picture her face, the way her nose scrunched when she was thinking hard about something. "Does the dragon know we're stealing them?" "The dragon left them specifically for brave girls who finished their homework." "I did finish my homework. We made a diorama about penguins, and mine was the best one. Miss Rodriguez said so." "Of course it was." "Are you coming home soon?" Adrian looked back through the glass at the gala. Mortimer was talking animatedly to someone else now, probably complaining about flighty billionaires who didn't understand priorities. The ballroom sparkled like a jewelry box, full of people who would have killed for the opportunities Adrian treated as interruptions. "Soon as I can, Butterfly. I promise." "We could build a snowman tomorrow if it keeps snowing, a really big one. The biggest one on the block." "Okay. I'll eat 3 more carrots, but that's it. That's my girl. Love you, Daddy. Love you more." He ended the call and stood there in the falling snow, not ready to go back inside yet. The balcony was technically closed for the event, but Adrian had donated enough money to this hotel that nobody questioned where he went. That's when he realized he wasn't alone. Khan. Clara Bennett had been trying to become invisible for so long that she usually succeeded. At 30 years old, she had perfected the art of moving through spaces without being seen. She wore her hotel uniform like camouflage, kept her head down, responded to requests before people finished making them. Most of the staff had been pulled into gala duty tonight. Claire was supposed to be checking the upper floor guest rooms, making sure everything was perfect for the VIPs who would stumble up after midnight, drunk on champagne and their own importance. But she'd needed air. Just 5 minutes away from the forced smiles and the way rich people looked through her like she was furniture. She'd slipped onto the balcony thinking it was empty. Then Adrian Vale had walked out, and she'd frozen near the corner, half hidden by one of the decorative planters, hoping he wouldn't notice her. She'd heard everything. The phone call, The gentleness in his voice, the way he talked to his daughter like she was the only person in the world who mattered. Clara had spent her whole life around wealthy people. She cleaned their rooms, served their drinks, picked up after their carelessness. She knew what they were like: demanding, dismissive, so focused on their own needs that everyone else became background noise. But this man had just walked away from what sounded like a massive business deal to talk about carrots and snowmen. "You can come out," Adrian said without turning around. "I know you're there." Clara's stomach dropped. She considered pretending she hadn't heard him, but that was stupid. She stepped forward, hands clasped in front of her uniform. "I'm sorry, Mr. Vale, the balcony is supposed to be closed. I was just checking that." "It's fine." He turned to look at her, and Clara was struck by how tired he seemed. Not sleepy, worn down. "You work here?" "Yes, sir." "Housekeeping." "How long?" 4 years. He nodded slowly, like that information meant something. "You hear the call?" Clara hesitated. Lying seemed worse than admitting the truth. "Yes, sir. I didn't mean to eavesdrop." "It's a small balcony." He looked back out at the snow. "You think I'm crazy? Walking out of that meeting? It's not my place to—" "I'm asking anyway." Clara swallowed. Every instinct told her to give the safe answer, the one that wouldn't cause problems. But something about the way he asked, like he actually wanted to know, made her tell the truth. "I think your daughter is lucky." Adrian's expression shifted. Not quite a smile, but something softer than the neutral mask he'd been wearing. "Most people would say I'm being irresponsible. That's a $100 million deal in there. Most people don't have anyone who calls them at 8:15 to talk about carrots." This time he did smile. Small, but genuine. "You got kids?" "No, sir." "Family?" Clara shook her head. She didn't add that she hadn't spoken to her mother in 6 years, or that she didn't know who her father was, or that every relationship she'd ever had ended with some variation of "you're too much," or "you're not enough." Adrian seemed to sense he'd touched something tender. He changed direction. "What's your name?" "Clara Bennett." "I'm Adrian." "I know who you are, Mr. Vale." "Adrian," he corrected. Then, before she could respond, he asked, "You ever feel like you're living the wrong life, like you took a wrong turn somewhere and ended up in someone else's story?" The question was so unexpected, so raw, that Clara forgot to be careful. "Every day." "Yeah." He rubbed his face with both hands. "Me too." They stood in silence for a moment. The snow was falling harder now, beginning to stick to the balcony railing. Clara knew she should leave, get back to work before someone noticed she was missing. But something kept her there. "My wife died when Mia was 2, Adrian said quietly. "Car accident. Black ice. Wrong place, wrong second. Just gone." Clara didn't know what to say. "I'm sorry," seemed too small. "Everyone told me to hire more help. Full-time nanny, au pair, boarding school eventually. They said I couldn't run Vale Industries and be a real parent, had to choose." "But you didn't." "No." He looked at her directly. "I chose both. And some days I'm drowning, and some days I wonder if I'm failing at everything. But Mia knows I choose her. Every single time. That has to count for something." "It counts for everything," Clara said, and meant it with an intensity that surprised her. Adrian studied her face like he was trying to figure out a puzzle. "You always this honest with strangers?" "No, sir. Usually I just smile and say, 'Yes, sir,' and disappear." "So why not tonight?" Clara thought about that. "Maybe because you asked a real question." Before Adrian could respond, the balcony doors burst open. Charles Mortimer stood there, red-faced and clearly past frustration into anger. "Adrian, this is completely unacceptable. We have been waiting for 20 minutes. "Then you should have started without me," Adrian said calmly. "This is the Singapore deal, the biggest expansion opportunity we've had in 5 years, and it'll still be there tomorrow. Hendrick Corp is moving tonight. If we don't commit now, we lose the advantage." Adrian turned to face Mortimer fully. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but absolutely firm. "Charles, I'm going to say this once. My daughter needed to talk to me. That was more important than this deal, more important than Hendrick Corp, more important than any advantage we might lose. If you can't understand that, then maybe we need different investors." Mortimer's mouth opened and closed. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." The two men stared at each other. Clara wanted to disappear into the planter again, but moving would draw attention. Finally, Mortimer shook his head. Your father would be ashamed. Something dark flashed across Adrian's face. My father died alone in a hospital room because he was too busy for his family to visit. Nobody from the office came either, because as soon as he wasn't useful, they all moved on. So please, tell me again what he would think. Mortimer went pale. I didn't mean... Yes, you did, and that's fine, but I'm not my father. I'm never going to be my father. Adrian's voice was steel wrapped in silk. The answer is no. We're not moving on Singapore tonight. We'll revisit the projections next quarter, and if the numbers still make sense, we'll talk then. On my timeline, not Hendricks, not yours, mine. Adrian, this conversation is over, Charles. Mortimer looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Adrian's expression stopped him. He turned and walked back inside, leaving the balcony doors open behind him. Claire could hear the party continuing inside. Music, laughter, the clink of glasses. None of those people knew what had just happened out here. None of them would care. I should go, Adrian said, but he didn't move. Yes, sir. Stop calling me sir. Yes, sir. Clara caught herself. Sorry. Habit. Bad habit. He looked at her again with that same puzzled expression, like he was trying to understand something that didn't quite make sense. Can I ask you something? Of course. When's the last time someone chose you first? The question hit Clara like a physical blow. She opened her mouth to answer and found she couldn't, because the truth was never. Nobody had ever chosen her first. She was the backup plan, the convenient option, the person you settled for when better things fell through. Adrian seemed to read the answer in her silence. Yeah, that's what I thought. I should really get back to work, Clara managed. Clara, she stopped. Thank you for being honest with me. Most people just tell me what they think I want to hear. You're welcome. She walked back inside before her voice could crack. The warm air hit her face, too hot after the cold of the balcony. Her hands were shaking, and she didn't know why. Behind her, Adrian Vale stood alone in the falling snow, looking at something she couldn't see. Clara made it through the rest of her shift on autopilot. She checked rooms, restocked minibars, replaced towels. Around 11, most of the gala attendees began filtering upstairs. She kept her head down, her movements efficient, her face blank. Excuse me, miss? Clara turned to find a woman in a red dress, diamonds dripping from her neck and ears, swaying slightly on designer heels. Yes, ma'am? I need fresh champagne in my room. The bottles they provided are completely inadequate. Of course, ma'am. I'll have some sent up right away. Not sent, brought, by you. I don't want just anyone handling my things. Clara swallowed her irritation. Yes, ma'am. Right away. She made her way down to the service area, put in the request, waited while someone retrieved the bottles from the event stock. The whole time she kept thinking about Adrian's question. When's the last time someone chose you first? She was still thinking about it when she delivered the champagne, when the woman didn't bother to thank her, when her shift finally ended at midnight and she walked out into a city transformed by snow. Clara lived 40 minutes away by bus. She usually didn't mind the commute, use the time to read or listen to music or just stare out the window at other people's lives. Tonight, the buses were running late because of the weather. She waited at the stop, snow collecting on her shoulders, watching expensive cars glide past, carrying people to warm homes and people who cared if they arrived safely. Her phone buzzed, text from her roommate Shanice. Might have a guy over tonight. Can you stay out until late? Clara stared at the message. It was midnight. It was snowing. She'd been on her feet for 8 hours. She typed back, sure, no problem, because that's what Clara did. She accommodated. She adjusted. She made herself smaller so other people could take up more space. The bus finally came. She found a seat in the back and pressed her forehead against the cold window. Adrian Vale had walked away from a $100 million deal to talk to his daughter about carrots. Clara couldn't even ask her roommate not to kick her out of her own apartment after a midnight shift. Something about the comparison made her throat tight. She closed her eyes and tried not to feel pathetic for crying about it on a city bus while snow fell outside and strangers pretended not to notice. Adrian got home at 1 in the morning. Mrs. Chen, the nanny, was asleep on the couch with her book open on her chest. He paid her double for the late night, called her a car, and walked quietly down the hall to Mia's room. She was asleep in a nest of blankets, her dark hair spread across the pillow. One arm wrapped around the stuffed elephant she'd had since she was a baby. Her nightlight cast stars across the ceiling. Adrian sat on the edge of her bed and just watched her breathe. This was the only part of his life that felt real anymore. Everything else, the company, the deals, the investors, the constant pressure to grow and expand and compete, it all felt like a game he was playing because he'd inherited the controller. But Mia was real. The way she laughed at bad jokes, the way she insisted on wearing mismatched socks because matching is boring, Daddy. The way she asked him questions about everything. Why is the sky blue? Where do thoughts come from? Do dogs dream about running? She stirred, eyes opening halfway. Daddy? Hey, Butterfly, just checking on you. Did you win the important meeting? Adrian smiled. I won something better. What? I remembered what matters. She yawned, already drifting back to sleep. Is it still snowing? Yeah. Big snowman tomorrow? The biggest. Love you. Love you more. She was asleep again before he finished standing up. Adrian walked to the window and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, Clara Bennett was probably going home to whatever life she led when she wasn't making herself invisible at the Silvercrest Grand Hotel. He kept thinking about the look on her face when he'd asked when someone had chosen her first. That flash of pain she'd tried to hide. The quick recovery that spoke of years of practice at not letting people see her hurt. Adrian knew that look. He'd seen it in the mirror enough times. His wife Sarah had died 6 years ago, and in those 6 years he'd dated exactly twice. Both times had been disasters. The first woman had spent the entire dinner talking about her charity work while checking her phone every 5 minutes. The second had smiled at Mia but looked at her like a problem to be solved, an obstacle to work around. He'd given up after that, decided it was easier to focus on Mia and the company and forget about the lonely parts. But tonight, standing on a balcony with a woman he'd never met before, talking about carrots and wrong turns and choosing differently, he'd felt something crack open. Some part of himself he'd kept carefully locked away. He didn't know what to do with that feeling. So he did what he always did when he didn't know what to do. He went to his office, the small one in the apartment, not the massive one downtown, and worked until his eyes burned and his thoughts finally quieted. At 3 a.m, he fell asleep at his desk, with snowflakes still drifting past the window, and Clara Bennett's honest eyes still clear in his memory. Clara got home at 2:30. The apartment was dark except for candlelight coming from Shanice's room, along with music and low laughter. Clara stood in the doorway for a moment, wet and cold and so tired her bones ached. She could text Shanice, ask if the guy had left yet, but that would make her the inconvenient roommate, the one who couldn't read social cues, the one who didn't understand how these things worked. Instead, she walked to the all-night diner 3 blocks away and ordered coffee she didn't want just to have somewhere to sit. The waitress was kind, at least. Older woman named Dolores, who worked the graveyard shift and never asked questions when Clara showed up at odd hours. She refilled the coffee without being asked and left Clara alone with her thoughts. Clara pulled out her phone and opened her banking app. $342 until payday. Rent was due in a week. She was behind on her electric bill. Her mother had called last month asking for money, and Clara had sent it even though she knew it would go to her mother's boyfriend's poker games. This was her life. Working hard, falling behind, making herself small, and still never quite enough. She thought about Adrian Vale's apartment. She'd never seen it, but she could imagine. Probably had more square footage than this entire diner. Probably had a view of the park, or the river, or something beautiful that people with money got to wake up to every day. But he'd walked away from a $100 million deal to talk to his daughter. Clara didn't know what to do with that information. It didn't fit anywhere in her understanding of how the world worked. Rich people weren't supposed to be kind. They weren't supposed to ask real questions or care about the answers. They weren't supposed to look at someone like Clara and see an actual person. Her phone buzzed. Shanice. Coast is clear. Sorry about that, babe. You know how it is. Clara did know how it is. She'd been knowing how it is her entire life. She paid for the coffee, left Dolores a tip she couldn't afford, and walked back out into the snow. The apartment was quiet when she got back. She took a shower so hot it nearly scalded her skin, trying to wash away the feeling of being temporary in her own life. In bed, staring at the ceiling, she kept replaying the conversation on the balcony, the way Adrian had looked at her. Not through her, like most people, at her, like she was someone worth seeing. When's the last time someone chose you first? Clara fell asleep with that question still echoing in her mind, snow still falling outside, and no answer that didn't hurt. The story of Adrian Vale and Clara Bennett might have ended there. A brief encounter, a moment of unexpected honesty, then a return to separate lives that would never intersect again. But the universe has a way of tangling threads that are supposed to stay apart. 3 days later, Clara was working the day shift at the Silvercrest, cleaning the executive suites on the top floor. These rooms were reserved for long-term corporate clients, usually executives in town for extended business. They paid ridiculous amounts of money for the privilege of living in a hotel instead of finding an apartment. Clara was restocking the bathroom when she heard voices in the main room. "Daddy, can we order the pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse?" Clara froze. "They don't have Mickey Mouse pancakes on the room service menu, Butterfly." "Then can we go somewhere that does?" "We will. Later. Right now I need to make some calls." "Boring calls?" "Very boring calls." Clara stood perfectly still in the bathroom, holding a stack of fresh towels, trying to figure out what to do. She could wait until they left, or she could walk out now, apologize for the intrusion, finish her work quickly and professionally. She chose the second option because hiding seemed cowardly. She stepped out of the bathroom. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Vale. I didn't realize anyone was here. I can come back." Adrian turned from the window. Recognition flickered across his face, followed by something that might have been surprise, or pleasure, or both. Clara. The little girl, Mia, looked up from the coloring book she'd spread across the coffee table. She had her father's dark hair and the kind of wide, curious eyes that didn't miss anything. "You know her, Daddy?" "We met at the gala. Clara works here at the hotel." Adrian's voice was careful, professional. But there was something underneath it, a warmth that hadn't been there when he dealt with Charles Mortimer. "Oh." Mia studied Clara with the intense focus of a child deciding whether to trust someone. "Do you like coloring?" The question was so unexpected that Clara laughed. "I do, actually." "Do you stay in the lines?" "Sometimes. Other times I think the lines are just suggestions." Mia's face lit up. "That's what I think too. But Miss Rodriguez says we have to practice fine motor skills." "Miss Rodriguez sounds very smart." "She is. She has a fish named Herbert who lives in our classroom, and sometimes we get to feed him." Adrian was watching this exchange with an expression Clara couldn't quite read. He looked like he wanted to say something, but didn't know how to start. "I really can come back," Clara said. "I didn't mean to interrupt." "You're not interrupting," Adrian said quickly. Then to Mia, "Butterfly, can you give us a minute?" Mia sighed dramatically. "Is this about grown-up stuff?" "Yeah." "Fine. But I'm bringing my coloring book into the bedroom, and if you take too long, I'm going to color the dragon purple, even though dragons are supposed to be green." "Dragons can be any color they want," Adrian said. "That's what I said." She gathered her supplies and marched into the bedroom, closing the door with more force than necessary. Adrian waited until the door clicked shut. "She's mad at me because we're staying in a hotel instead of going home." "Why are you staying here?" "Pipe burst in our building. They're fixing it, but it'll take a week, maybe longer." He ran a hand through his hair, and Clara noticed it was messier than it had been at the gala, less controlled. "I offered to put us up somewhere else, but Mia liked this place because she could see the park from the window. She seems like a wonderful kid." "She is." Adrian's expression softened. "She's the best thing I've ever done." Clara didn't know what to say to that. The honesty in his voice made her chest tight. "I thought about you," Adrian said suddenly. "After the gala, I wondered if you got home okay, if the buses were running." Clara stared at him. "You thought about me?" "Yeah, is that weird?" "Yes, no, I don't know." She clutched the towels tighter. "People like you don't usually think about people like me." "People like me?" "Rich, important, busy." Adrian's jaw tightened. "That's the second time you've made assumptions about what kind of person I am based on money." "It's not an assumption. It's pattern recognition." "And what pattern have I shown you?" Clara opened her mouth to argue and realized she couldn't, because Adrian hadn't been rude to her, or dismissive, or condescending. He'd asked real questions. He'd listened to her answers. He'd thanked her for being honest. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "That wasn't fair." "It's fine." I know what most people in my position are like. I see them at every board meeting. He took a step closer. But I'm not most people. I'm starting to see that. They looked at each other for a long moment. Clara was suddenly very aware that she was in his hotel room, holding towels, probably looking like exactly what she was, someone who cleaned up after other people for minimum wage. I should let you work, Adrian said, but he didn't move. I should actually work, Clara agreed, also not moving. The bedroom door opened. Mia poked her head out. Daddy, I'm hungry, and the dragon is definitely going to be purple now. Adrian smiled. Okay, Butterfly, let's order room service. Can Clara stay? The question hung in the air. Clara's heart did something complicated. Clara's working, honey. But she could eat while she works. We have a really big table. Mia. It's okay, Clara said quickly. I appreciate it, but I have other rooms to finish. Mia's face fell in that particular way children have when adults ruin something that seemed perfectly logical to them. Clara made a decision that was probably stupid, but felt necessary. But maybe I could come back when my shift ends, if that's okay? She directed the question at Adrian, who looked surprised, then pleased. We'd like that, he said. What time? Mia asked, already excited again. 5 o'clock? We'll order extra pancakes, Mia declared, like this was the most important detail. Clara finished her work quickly after that, trying not to think about what she'd just agreed to. When she left, Mia waved from the couch where she was showing her father the purple dragon, and Adrian's eyes followed Clara to the door. In the hallway, Clara leaned against the wall and tried to catch her breath. What was she doing? She was agreeing to have pancakes with a billionaire and his 8-year-old daughter. That's what she was doing. It was probably nothing. A nice gesture from someone who felt bad for her. She'd eat pancakes, make small talk, and then go back to her regular life where she didn't intersect with people who lived in executive suites. But a small, dangerous part of her wanted it to be something more. And that was the part that scared her most. Clara's shift dragged like it was moving through cement. Every room she cleaned, every bed she made, every minibar she restocked felt like it took twice as long as usual. She kept checking her phone. 3:30. 4 o'clock. 4:15. By 4:30, she was second-guessing everything. She found Shanice in the break room, scrolling through her phone while eating someone else's leftover salad from the staff fridge. I need your opinion on something, Clara said. Shanice looked up. Did you steal that salad? Because Marcus is going to lose his mind. It's not about the salad. I got invited to have pancakes with someone. Okay, and this requires my opinion because it's a man and his daughter. Shanice's eyebrows went up. You're having pancakes with a single dad. Since when do you date? It's not a date, it's just pancakes. Clara, nothing is ever just pancakes. Who is this guy? Clara hesitated. Adrian Vale. The fork stopped halfway to Shanice's mouth. Adrian Vale, as in Vale Industries, Adrian Vale, the billionaire who stays in the penthouse suite? He's in an executive suite, not the penthouse. Oh well, that changes everything. Shanice put down the fork. Have you lost your mind? Probably. He invited you to eat pancakes with him and his kid, and you said yes? Girl, what are you thinking? I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. Shanice stood up and grabbed Clara by the shoulders. Listen to me very carefully. Men like Adrian Vale do not invite hotel housekeepers to casual pancake dinners. This is either a setup for something weird, or he's actually interested in you, and I genuinely don't know which option is worse. It's not weird. His daughter asked if I could stay. His 8-year-old daughter is a better wingman than most grown men I know. Shanice shook her head. What are you going to wear? My uniform? Absolutely not. You're getting changed. I have that blue sweater in my locker, the one that actually fits you better than it fits me. And for the love of everything, let me do something with your hair. Shanice, do not say it's just pancakes one more time or I'm eating this entire salad and letting Marcus blame you. 20 minutes later, Clara stood in front of the bathroom mirror wearing Shanice's blue sweater and minimal makeup that somehow made her look like a different person. Her hair was down instead of pulled back in the tight bun she wore for work. I look ridiculous, Clara said. You look like someone who doesn't spend 12 hours a day scrubbing toilets. There's a difference. Shanice stepped back, examining her work. Now, ground rules. Do not sleep with him on the first pancake dinner. I'm not going to Do not agree to anything that sounds too good to be true, because it probably is. Do not forget that he lives in a completely different universe than you do. And Clara? Shanice's voice softened. Do not let him make you feel small. You're worth more than you think you are. Clara's throat went tight. Thanks. Go eat your pancakes. Text me if anything weird happens, and I'll come extract you with a fake emergency. What kind of emergency? I'll figure it out. Maybe your apartment is flooding. Maybe I'm pregnant. Maybe Marcus finally snapped about the salad. Clara was still smiling when she knocked on the door to Adrian's suite at exactly 5 o'clock. She heard Mia's voice from inside, excited and clear. Daddy, she's here. I told you she'd come. The door opened. Adrian stood there in jeans and a t-shirt that probably cost more than Clara's rent, but looked completely normal. His hair was still messy. He hadn't shaved. He looked tired and real, and nothing like the polished businessman from the gala. Hey, he said. Hey, you changed. Clara felt her face heat. My shift ended. I didn't think you wanted me showing up in my uniform. I wouldn't have cared, but you look nice. Before Clara could figure out how to respond to that, Mia appeared beside her father, grinning wide. We ordered so many pancakes. Room service thought we were having a party. How many is so many? Clara asked. 12. 4 chocolate chip, 4 blueberry, 4 regular, plus bacon and eggs and those little sausages that look like tiny hot dogs. That's a lot of food. Daddy says we can put the leftovers in the fridge and have breakfast for dinner tomorrow. Adrian stepped aside to let Clara in. The suite looked different than it had that morning. Mia's coloring books were spread across the coffee table. There were toys scattered on the couch. A laptop sat open on the desk, several files stacked beside it. It looked lived in instead of sterile. The room service cart was set up by the window with enough food to feed 6 people. Mia climbed into one of the chairs and started loading her plate with an enthusiasm that made Clara smile. She's been excited all afternoon, Adrian said quietly. Kept asking if 5 o'clock was here yet. I'm glad I didn't cancel. Were you going to? I thought about it. What stopped you? Clara looked at Mia, who was now explaining to her pancakes why they were about to be eaten. I think I wanted to see if this was real. Is it? I'm still deciding. They sat down at the table. Mia insisted Clara sit next to her, which meant Adrian sat across from them both. For a few minutes, everyone just ate. The pancakes were better than they had any right to be, and Clara realized she'd skipped lunch. So Clara, Mia said, syrup on her chin, do you have a family? Mia, Adrian said gently, that's personal. It's okay, Clara said, though her stomach tightened. I have a mom. We don't really talk much anymore. Why not? Mia, it's complicated, Clara said. Sometimes grown-ups stop getting along, even when they love each other. Mia considered this seriously. Like how Daddy stopped being friends with Uncle Charles after the fight at the gala? Adrian choked slightly on his coffee. That wasn't exactly... We're still friends, sort of. You said he was being a jerk. I said he was being difficult. You said jerk when you thought I was asleep. Clara tried not to laugh. Adrian looked caught between embarrassment and resignation. Okay, yes, sometimes adults are jerks, but we still have to work with them. That sounds terrible, Mia said. It is, Adrian agreed. Is that why you're always tired? The question hit differently than the others. Adrian's expression shifted into something unguarded, almost vulnerable. Yeah, butterfly, that's part of it. You should take more naps. Miss Rodriguez says naps are important for brain development. I'll keep that in mind. Mia turned back to Clara. Do you like your job? Another loaded question from an 8-year-old who didn't realize she was stepping on landmines. Clara chose honesty. Some parts. I like that it keeps me busy. I like some of the people I work with. But not all of it? Not all of it. What would you do if you could do anything? Clara opened her mouth and realized she didn't have an answer. When was the last time anyone had asked her that? When was the last time she'd let herself want something beyond making it through the next month? I don't know, she admitted. I used to want to be a teacher, but that didn't work out. Why not? College is expensive. Life got in the way. Mia frowned like this was a serious injustice. That's not fair. A lot of things aren't fair, honey. Daddy says when things aren't fair, we have to try to fix them. Clara glanced at Adrian, who was studying his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. Your dad sounds very smart. He is, except about vegetables. He makes me eat broccoli even though it's basically tiny trees, and eating trees is weird. Broccoli is good for you, Adrian said. So is ice cream. It has calcium. That's not how nutrition works. You don't know that for sure. Clara laughed, really laughed, for the first time in longer than she could remember. Mia beamed at her, clearly proud of herself. They finished eating while Mia told stories about her school, her best friend Hannah, who could burp the alphabet, and the substitute teacher who accidentally called their principal Mom, and everyone laughed but tried to pretend they didn't. Adrian added commentary here and there, but mostly he just watched his daughter with an expression that made Clara's chest ache. This was what love looked like. Not the dramatic kind from movies. The quiet kind that showed up in paying attention, in remembering details, in making pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse matter. After dinner, Mia announced she wanted to watch a movie, but only if Clara stayed. Adrian looked at Clara with a question in his eyes, giving her an out if she wanted it. She should leave. This was already more than she'd signed up for, but she found herself saying yes anyway. They ended up on the couch, Mia between them, watching some animated movie about a girl who could talk to animals. Halfway through, Mia fell asleep with her head on Clara's shoulder. She likes you, Adrian said softly. How can you tell? She doesn't fall asleep on people she doesn't trust. Clara looked down at the little girl, her face peaceful in sleep. She's easy to like. Most people find her exhausting. Most people are idiots. Adrian smiled. Yeah, they are. He stood up carefully and lifted Mia into his arms. She stirred but didn't wake, just curled into his chest like she'd done it 1,000 times before. He carried her into the bedroom and came back a few minutes later. She's out cold, he said, sitting down again but keeping more distance than before. Thanks for staying. This whole hotel thing has been hard on her. She misses her routine. How much longer until you can go home? They're saying another week, maybe 2. Depends on the damage. He rubbed his face. I offered to rent a house, but Mia liked this place. Said it felt like an adventure. She's a good kid. She's the only good thing I've ever made. He said it like a confession. Everything else, the company, the money, all of it, none of it means anything compared to her. I believe you. Do you? Because most people think I'm crazy, that I should care more about quarterly earnings and market share and expansion opportunities. The same people who think carrots taste like sadness. Adrian laughed quietly. Yeah, those people. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. The movie was still playing, forgotten. Outside the window, the city lights sparkled against the dark sky. Can I ask you something? Adrian said. Okay. Why did you really come tonight? And don't say because Mia asked. You could have said no. Clara thought about how to answer that. I think I wanted to see if you were real. Real how? The kind of person who walks away from business deals for bedtime calls, who raises his daughter alone and actually likes it, who asks questions and listens to the answers. She looked at him directly. People like that don't usually exist in my world. What world is that? The one where I'm invisible. Adrian's expression darkened. You're not invisible. To most people I am. I clean their rooms, I bring them towels, I fix their problems, and they look right through me like I'm not even there. I see you. The words were simple, but they landed heavy. Clara felt something shift in her chest, something dangerous and warm. Why? She asked. Why do you see me when everyone else doesn't? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Because I know what it's like to be looked at but not seen. Everyone thinks they know who I am, the billionaire, the Vail Industries heir, the guy who has everything figured out. But none of them actually see me. They see what they want to see, what's useful to them. And what do you want them to see? Just a dad trying his best. A person who's tired and scared and has no idea if he's doing any of this right. He met her eyes. Same thing you want, probably, to be seen as a whole person, not just the parts that are convenient. Clara's throat felt tight. Yeah, that's exactly it. So I see you, Adrian said, because I know what it costs to be invisible, and because when I look at you, I see someone who's honest and kind and stronger than she thinks she is, someone who deserves to be chosen first. Clara had to look away before she did something stupid like cry. You don't even know me. I know enough. You know I clean hotel rooms and ride the bus and can't afford to finish college. That's not exactly impressive. You know I inherited a fortune and still feel like I'm failing most days. That I'm raising a daughter alone and constantly worried I'm screwing her up. That I walked away from $100 million deal because I'd rather talk about carrots. Adrian's voice was gentle but firm. None of us are impressive when you strip away the surface stuff. We're all just people trying to get through the day. It's not the same. Why not? Because you have choices I'll never have. You can walk away from deals. I can't walk away from rent. You're right. I have money, and that gives me freedom you don't have. But money doesn't make me less lonely. It doesn't make me less scared that I'm failing Mia. It doesn't make any of this easier. Clara wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. Because he was right, in a way that made her uncomfortable. She'd spent so long blaming her problems on not having enough money that she'd never considered what money couldn't fix. I should go, she said, standing up. Adrian stood too. Did I say something wrong? No, this is just, it's a lot. Clara, I had a nice time. Really. Thank you for the pancakes. She was already moving toward the door, needing to leave before she fell apart. Adrian followed but didn't try to stop her. Can I see you again? She turned, hand on the doorknob. Why would you want to? Because I like talking to you. Because Mia likes you. Because for the first time in years, I feel like I'm having a real conversation with someone who isn't trying to get something from me. I don't fit in your life. My life isn't as neat as you think it is. Clara looked at him standing there in his expensive suite with his sleeping daughter in the next room and his complicated eyes that saw too much. This was a mistake. Getting close to this man, to this life, to the possibility of something that couldn't work. But she heard herself say, okay. Okay? You can see me again, if you want. Adrian smiled, and it transformed his whole face. Tomorrow? We could get actual dinner, not room service. I work until 6. 6:30 then. I'll pick you up. You don't know where I live. So tell me. Clara gave him her address, feeling like she was making a terrible decision. He pulled out his phone and saved it, and she tried not to think about what it meant that a billionaire now had her apartment number in his contacts. Tomorrow, he said. Tomorrow, she agreed. She made it to the elevator before her hands started shaking. Made it to the lobby before her brain started screaming about what she'd just done. Made it outside into the cold night air before she had to stop and just breathe. Her phone buzzed. Text from Shanice. Well, are you alive? Do I need to call the cops? Clara typed back. I'm alive. We had pancakes. I'm seeing him again tomorrow. The response was immediate. Girl, call me right now. But Clara didn't call. She walked to the bus stop and waited in the cold, trying to make sense of what had just happened. A billionaire had invited her to dinner. His daughter had fallen asleep on her shoulder. He told her she deserved to be chosen first. None of it made sense. None of it fit with how her life was supposed to go. The bus came. She found her usual seat in the back and pressed her forehead against the cold window. Tomorrow she was having dinner with Adrian Vale. Tomorrow she was making a choice that would probably break her heart. But for tonight, she let herself feel something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. It scared her more than anything. Adrian stood at the window long after Clara left, watching the street below until he couldn't tell which distant figure might be her anymore. Daddy? He turned. Mia stood in the bedroom doorway, rubbing her eyes. Hey, Butterfly, I thought you were asleep. I was. But then I woke up and Clara was gone. She had to go home. Is she coming back? Adrian walked over and picked her up, even though she was getting too big for it. She wrapped her arms around his neck and he breathed in the smell of her strawberry shampoo. Yeah, he said. She's coming back. Good. I like her. Me too. Do you like her? Like how Uncle Marcus liked that lady with the weird laugh? Adrian couldn't help smiling. Maybe. Is that okay? Mia pulled back to look at him seriously. Does she make you happy? I think she might. Then it's okay. You should be happy, Daddy. You're always taking care of me, but nobody takes care of you. You take care of me. I'm 8. I can't even reach the high shelves. You take care of my heart. That's more important than shelves. Mia hugged him tighter. I love you. I love you more. He carried her back to bed and tucked her in, and this time she fell asleep almost immediately. Adrian sat on the edge of her bed for a while, just watching her breathe like he'd done since she was born. His phone buzzed. Text from Charles Mortimer. Board meeting tomorrow at 10. We need to discuss Singapore. This can't wait any longer. Adrian stared at the message. 6 years ago, he would have panicked, would have spent all night preparing arguments, running numbers, figuring out how to convince everyone he was making the right choice. Now he just typed back, "I'll be there." Answer is still no. He turned off his phone before Charles could respond. Tomorrow he had a board meeting where people would tell him he was being irresponsible. Tomorrow he had a company to run and decisions to make and all the normal pressures of his life. But tomorrow night he was having dinner with Clara Bennett, and that felt more important than anything else. He didn't know where this was going. Didn't know if it could work. If the gap between their lives was too wide to cross. Didn't know if he was setting them both up for disappointment. But for the first time since Sarah died, he wanted to find out. That had to mean something. Bestimmt. Clara got home to find Shanice waiting on the couch with 2 glasses of cheap wine and an expression that demanded details. "Talk," Shanice said, handing her a glass. Clara sat down and told her everything. The pancakes, Mia falling asleep on her shoulder, the conversation about being seen, the dinner invitation. Shanice listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her. When Clara finished, she took a long drink of wine. "Okay," Shanice said finally. "I'm going to say something, and I need you to actually hear me. Okay. You have spent your entire life making yourself smaller so other people could be comfortable. Your mom, your ex-boyfriends, your boss, me when I kick you out so I can have guys over. You apologize for existing, and you never ask for anything, and you act like wanting things is selfish. Shanice, I'm not done. This man sees you, like actually sees you. And that terrifies you because if he really sees you, he might also see all the parts you think aren't good enough. But Clara, what if those parts are exactly what he likes? What if you being yourself, the real messy, broke, exhausted version, is what makes you worth seeing?" Clara felt tears prick her eyes. "What if I'm not enough?" "For who? For some billionaire? Screw that. The question is whether he's enough for you. How can he not be enough? He's literally a billionaire. Money doesn't make someone a good person, or a good partner, or worth your time." Shanice reached over and squeezed her hand. "You are allowed to want things, Clara. You're allowed to take up space. You're allowed to be with someone who actually chooses you, not because he feels sorry for you, but because you make his life better just by being in it." "What if this is a mistake?" "Then it's a mistake. But what if it's not? What if this is the thing that finally makes you realize you deserve good things?" Clara wiped her eyes. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been this wise. You just never ask for advice about anything important." Shanice topped off both their glasses. "Now, what are you wearing to this dinner?" "I have no idea." "We're going shopping tomorrow on your lunch break." "I can't afford—" "I'm buying. And before you argue, remember that you've covered my share of rent twice this year when I was short. Let me do this." Clara wanted to argue but didn't have the energy. "Okay, thank you." They finished the wine while watching terrible reality TV, and for a little while Clara let herself forget about tomorrow's dinner and all the ways it could go wrong. But later, lying in bed, she couldn't stop thinking about the way Adrian had looked at her when he said she deserved to be chosen first. Like he meant it. Like he could see something in her that she'd stopped seeing in herself. She fell asleep with her phone on the pillow beside her, half expecting a text saying he'd changed his mind, that tomorrow was off, that he'd realized what a ridiculous idea this was. The text never came. And when Clara woke up the next morning, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Like maybe, just maybe, something good was about to happen. It was unfamiliar enough to be almost painful, but she was starting to think it might be worth the risk. The board meeting started exactly how Adrian expected. Charles Mortimer had clearly spent the night preparing ammunition, and he came out firing. "We're leaving money on the table," Charles said, standing at the head of the conference room with a presentation already loaded on the screen behind him. Hendrick Corp moved forward with their Singapore launch yesterday. While we sat on our hands, Adrian sat at the far end of the table, coffee going cold in front of him. He'd been up since 5 with Mia, who'd insisted on making him breakfast, which consisted of burnt toast and scrambled eggs that were somehow both runny and hard at the same time. He'd eaten every bite and told her it was delicious. "We didn't sit on our hands," Adrian said calmly. "We made a strategic decision to wait." "Based on what strategy exactly?" Another board member, Patricia Chen, leaned forward. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like we're afraid to compete." "We're not afraid. We're being smart." "Smart would have been moving 3 weeks ago when I first brought this to you." Charles clicked to the next slide. "Here's what Hendrick's stock did after their announcement. Up 7%. 7%, Adrian. That could have been us." Adrian looked at the graph, at the sharp upward line that represented money and growth and all the things he was supposed to care about. He did care, but not enough to make panicked decisions just because someone else moved first. "Hendrick also laid off 400 people last quarter to fund that expansion," Adrian said. "I read their earnings report. They're cutting costs to make the numbers work." "That's business." "That's not how we do business." "Maybe it should be." Charles's voice had an edge now. "Your father built this company by making hard choices, by putting the company first." There it was. The comparison Adrian had been waiting for. He took a slow breath and reminded himself that throwing things at board members was frowned upon. "My father also died alone," Adrian said quietly, "so forgive me if I don't think his way of doing business is the model I want to follow." The room went silent. Patricia looked uncomfortable. 2 other board members suddenly found their phones very interesting. Charles's jaw tightened. "This isn't about your personal feelings about your father. This is about the future of this company. And I'm telling you, the future of this company includes thinking long-term instead of chasing quarterly gains. We wait until we can do Singapore right, with proper infrastructure and without cutting our people to make the numbers pretty. And if Hendrick dominates the market while we wait, then they dominate the market. We'll find another opportunity." "You're being naive." "I'm being responsible." Charles looked around the table, clearly trying to gauge support. A few board members nodded slightly. Others looked away. Nobody was jumping to take his side. "I'd like to call for a vote," Charles said. "There's nothing to vote on," Adrian replied. "I'm not bringing Singapore to a vote. The answer is no. We're tabling it until next quarter at the earliest." "You can't just make unilateral decisions." "Actually, I can. Controlling interest, remember?" Adrian stood up. "Meeting's over. Anyone who wants to discuss actual business instead of hypothetical expansions, I'll be in my office." He walked out before anyone could respond. His assistant Jenny jumped slightly as he passed her desk. "Mr. Vale, you have—" "I know. Push everything back an hour. I need some air." He took the stairs instead of the elevator, 12 flights down to the lobby, and then kept walking until he found himself in the small park 2 blocks from his building. It was cold enough that most people were hurrying past, hunched against the wind. Adrian sat on a bench and stared at nothing. His phone rang. He almost didn't answer, but it was Mia's school. "Mr. Vale, this is Principal Morrison. Nothing serious, but Mia had a small incident today, and she's asking for you." Adrian's stomach dropped. "What kind of incident?" "She got into an argument with another student during recess. Nobody was hurt, but she's quite upset. Can you come pick her up?" "I'll be there in 20 minutes." He was there in 15. Mia sat in the principal's office, arms crossed, face blotchy from crying. As soon as she saw him, she launched herself at him. "Hey, Butterfly, what happened?" "Tyler said you were going to send me away to boarding school because taking care of me is too hard, and you want to focus on your company instead." Adrian's hands tightened on her shoulders. "Where did he hear that?" Principal Morrison cleared her throat. "Tyler's father works in finance. He apparently overheard some conversation about your board meeting this morning and repeated it at home. Tyler brought it to school." "And what did you say to Tyler?" Adrian asked Mia. "I said he was a liar, and his face looked like a potato." "Mia, but he is a liar, Daddy. You're not sending me away, right?" Adrian knelt down so he was eye level with her. "Never. Not ever. I don't care what anyone says or thinks. You are the most important thing in my life, and that's never going to change. Promise?" "I promise. On everything I have." Mia hugged him so tight he could barely breathe. Over her head, he looked at Principal Morrison. "Tyler needs to apologize," Adrian said. "I agree. I'll be speaking with his parents this afternoon. And if this happens again, if anyone repeats gossip about my family to my daughter, I want to know immediately. Of course, Mr. Vale. Adrian signed Mia out for the rest of the day. In the car, she was quiet, picking at her backpack straps. You really meant that? She asked. About me being the most important thing? Every word. But your company is important too. It's a company, Butterfly. Companies can be replaced. You can't. What about the Singapore thing? I heard you talking on the phone last night. Adrian glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Were you spying? I was getting water. You were talking loud. He sighed. Singapore is a business opportunity. Some people think we should take it. I think we should wait. Why? Because moving too fast means making mistakes, and some mistakes hurt people. Mia thought about this. Is that why you walked away from that meeting at the gala? Because you didn't want to make mistakes? Partly, but mostly because I'd rather talk to you than to people who only care about money. I like Clara better than those people, too. The subject change caught Adrian off guard. Yeah? She doesn't talk to me like I'm stupid. And she listens when I tell her things. And she made you smile more in one night than you've smiled in like a month. Has it been that bad? You're always tired, Daddy, and worried, even when you pretend you're not. Adrian's chest felt tight. He pulled into their building's parking garage and turned to look at her properly. I'm sorry if I've been making you worry. It's okay, but I think Clara makes you less worried, so maybe you should keep seeing her. Just like that. Yeah, just like that. Mia unbuckled her seatbelt. Are we still at the hotel tonight? Yeah, for a few more days. Is Clara coming over again? Actually, I'm taking her to dinner tonight, just the two of us. Mia's eyes went wide. Like a date? Yeah, like a date. Who's watching me? Mrs. Chen. Can we order pizza? If Mrs. Chen says it's okay, she always says it's okay if I ask nicely. Mia grinned. This is good, Daddy. You should go on dates. You're too young to be alone forever. I'm 32, not 90. Exactly. Way too young. They went back up to the hotel suite. Adrian tried to do some work while Mia did homework, but he couldn't concentrate. He kept thinking about the board meeting, about Charles's face when Adrian had mentioned his father, about the fact that people were apparently gossiping about his parenting choices to the point where it reached his daughter's school. He also kept thinking about dinner with Clara, about the fact that in a few hours he'd be sitting across from her at a restaurant trying to have a normal date like a normal person who didn't have a billion-dollar company and a precocious 8-year-old and a board full of people who thought he was making terrible decisions. His phone buzzed. Text from Clara. Still on for tonight? No pressure if things came up? Adrian smiled and typed back. Still on. Looking forward to it. Her response came quickly. Me too. Nervous, but looking forward to it. Why nervous? Because I have no idea what I'm doing. Me neither. We'll figure it out together. There was a pause, then, okay, see you at 6:30. Adrian put his phone down and found Mia watching him with a knowing expression. You're smiling again, she said. Am I? Yep. The Clara smile. There's a Clara smile? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. It's different from your regular smile. More real. Adrian didn't know what to say to that. Mia went back to her homework, and he went back to pretending to work, and the afternoon crept forward slowly. At 5:30, Mrs. Chen arrived. At 5:45, Adrian was showered and dressed and second-guessing every clothing choice he'd made. At 6, he was pacing the suite while Mia and Mrs. Chen watched him with matching, amused expressions. You look fine, Daddy, Mia said. Better than fine. Claire's going to think you look really nice. You think? I know. Now go before you're late. He kissed her goodbye, reminded Mrs. Chen about bedtime, and left before he could overthink it anymore. The drive to Clara's apartment took him through parts of the city he rarely visited. The buildings got older, the streets narrower, the parking harder to find. He finally found a spot 3 blocks away and walked the rest. Clara's building was a 5-story walk-up that had seen better days. The front door was propped open with a brick. The hallway smelled like someone had burned dinner and tried to cover it up with air freshener. Adrian climbed to the 3rd floor and found apartment 3C. He knocked, heard scrambling inside, muffled voices, then Clara opened the door. She was wearing a dark green dress that Adrian had never seen before, her hair down and curled slightly. She looked nervous and beautiful and completely different from the careful, controlled woman he'd met at the hotel. Hi, she said. Hi. You look amazing. Shanice made me buy it. I feel like I'm playing dress up. You look perfect. Behind Clara, a woman appeared, Shanice presumably. She looked Adrian up and down with an expression that was equal parts curious and protective. So you're the billionaire, Shanice said. That's me. You heard her. I know where you live. Shanice, Clara hissed. What? I'm just establishing ground rules. Shanice grabbed her coat. I'm leaving. You two kids have fun. Clara, text me when you get home. I'm not 12. Text me anyway. Shanice left and Clara grabbed her coat and purse. In the hallway, she locked her door with 2 different locks and checked the handle twice. Habit, she said when she caught Adrian watching. This neighborhood isn't the greatest. I noticed the front door. Yeah, the lock's been broken for 6 months. Landlord keeps saying he'll fix it. They walked down the stairs in silence. On the street, Clara stopped when she saw where Adrian was leading her. That's your car? Yeah, is that okay? She stared at the sleek black sedan. I've never been in a car that costs more than my annual salary. It's just a car. No, it's really not. Adrian opened the passenger door for her. She slid in carefully, like she was afraid of breaking something. He got in the driver's side and started the engine. Where are we going? Clara asked. There's a place in the West End, Italian, quiet. I thought we could actually talk without people recognizing you? Yeah. Does that happen a lot? More than I'd like, especially lately with all the press about the company. Clara was quiet for a moment, looking out the window as they drove. Can I ask you something? Anything. Why me? You could date anyone, Shai. Models, executives, people who fit into your life. Why are you taking a hotel housekeeper to dinner? Adrian had known this question was coming. He'd been asking himself the same thing since the night at the gala. Because when I talk to you, I don't have to pretend to be someone I'm not, he said finally. Everyone else in my life wants something. They want money or connections or access or approval, but you just want to have a real conversation. That's rare. And I missed it without realizing I missed it. What if I disappoint you? What if the real me isn't as interesting as you think? What if you don't? Adrian glanced at her. What if we stop catastrophizing and just see what happens? Clara laughed softly. Okay, yeah, we can do that. The restaurant was tucked into a side street, the kind of place that didn't advertise because it didn't need to. Adrian had called ahead for a private table in the back. The host recognized him, but was discreet about it, leading them to a corner booth away from the other diners. They ordered wine, then food, then sat there looking at each other like teenagers on a first date. This is weird, right? Clara said. It's not just me. It's definitely weird. Okay, good. I thought maybe I was broken. If you're broken, I'm broken too. That's not reassuring. Adrian smiled. Tell me something about you that I don't know. That's a broad question. Start anywhere. Clara thought for a moment. I wanted to be a teacher. Elementary school, probably 3rd or 4th grade. I used to tutor kids in my neighborhood for free when I was in high school. I loved seeing them figure things out. That moment when something clicked and they got excited about learning. Why didn't you pursue it? Money. I got into college but couldn't afford to stay. Took out loans for the first year. Then my mom got sick and needed help with bills, and I had to drop out to work full time. Kept telling myself I'd go back, but life kept happening. Is that something you still want? I don't know. It's been so long since I let myself want things that aren't just survival. Pay rent, buy groceries, make it to next month. Bigger dreams feel dangerous. Why dangerous? Because wanting things means being disappointed when you don't get them. And I've had enough disappointment to last a lifetime. The waiter brought their wine. Adrian waited until he left before responding. I get that, he said. After Sarah died, I stopped wanting things too. I had Mia to take care of and the company to run, and that was enough. Or I told myself it was enough. But really, I was just scared. Scared of what? Of wanting something and losing it again. Of letting someone in and having them leave. Of choosing wrong and ending up alone. He took a drink. Still scared, honestly. But you're here anyway. So are you. Clara smiled, and it was different from her careful work smile. Genuine, a little sad. Yeah, I am. Their food arrived. They talked about lighter things while they ate. Mia's school stories, Clara's worst hotel guest experiences, the absurdity of reality TV. The conversation flowed easier than Adrian expected, natural and comfortable in a way that made him realize how rare that was. Halfway through dinner, Claire's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression changed. "Everything okay?" Adrian asked. "It's my mom. She's asking for money again." "You don't have to answer." "I know, but if I don't, she'll keep calling. And then she'll show up at my work. And that's always a disaster." "What does she need it for?" Clara's laugh was bitter. "Does it matter? It's never what she says it's for. Last time she said she needed it for medicine. Turned out she wanted to bail out her boyfriend. You don't owe her anything. She's still my mom. That doesn't mean you have to set yourself on fire to keep her warm." Clara looked at him, surprised. "That's exactly what it feels like sometimes. Like I'm burning through everything I have just to keep other people comfortable. So stop. It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because she's alone. Because I'm all she has. Because if I don't help her, who will?" Adrian understood that guilt, the weight of being responsible for someone else's well-being. But he also understood that you couldn't save people who didn't want to be saved. "You can't fix her, Clara. You can only fix yourself." "Is that what you did? With your father?" The question landed hard. Adrian set down his fork. "My father and I didn't speak for the last 2 years of his life. He thought I was wasting my potential by choosing to be a present parent instead of expanding the company. I thought he was a miserable old man who'd traded his family for money. We were both right." "Do you regret it, not speaking to him?" "Sometimes. But mostly I regret that he never met the version of me that existed outside his expectations. He only saw what he wanted to see. And I got tired of trying to be that person." Clara nodded slowly. "I think I understand that." She texted her mother back, a short message that Adrian couldn't see but could guess the content of from the way her jaw tightened when she hit send. "I told her no," Clara said. "First time in maybe ever." "How does it feel?" "Terrible. Like I'm the worst daughter in the world." "You're not. You're just protecting yourself." "Is there a difference?" "Yeah, there is." They finished dinner slowly, neither wanting it to end. When the check came, Clara didn't even try to split it, and Adrian appreciated that she didn't make a thing out of the money. Some women he dated had either been aggressively insistent on paying or weirdly performative about letting him pay. Clara just let it happen and said thank you. Outside, the temperature had dropped. Clara shivered despite her coat, and Adrian offered his. She took it without arguing, and it swallowed her. "I look ridiculous," she said. You look cold." They walked slowly back to his car. Adrian didn't want to take her home yet. Didn't want this to end. "Can I show you something?" he asked. "Okay." He drove them across town to the waterfront, to a spot he'd discovered years ago when he needed space to think. At night, the city lights reflected on the water, and you could almost pretend you were somewhere else. They got out and walked to the railing. Clara looked out at the water, his coat still wrapped around her. "It's beautiful," she said. "I used to come here when things got too heavy. Before Mia, when the company felt like it was crushing me and I didn't know how to carry it." "What changed?" "Mia. She gave me a reason to carry it. Before her, I was just going through the motions. After her, every decision mattered because it affected her future." "That's a lot of pressure." "Yeah, but it's better than the emptiness." Clara turned to look at him. "Is that what it was before? Empty? I had everything someone was supposed to want. Money, success, respect, but none of it meant anything. I was playing a part in someone else's story. And now? Now I'm writing my own, or trying to. Some days I still don't know if I'm doing it right." "I think you're doing better than you realize." Adrian moved closer. "Can I tell you something?" "Yeah." "I haven't felt this nervous in years. Like actually nervous, not just stressed. And it's because I care what you think, what you see when you look at me." "What do you think I see?" "I don't know. That's what makes me nervous." Clara smiled. "I see someone who's trying really hard to be good, to do right by his daughter, to make choices that matter instead of choices that just look impressive. I see someone who's tired and scared and still showing up anyway." "That's not very flattering." "No, but it's real. And I like real better than perfect." Adrian closed the distance between them. He could see her breath in the cold air, could see the way her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't pull away. "Clara?" Yeah? I really want to kiss you right now, but I need to know if that's okay. She looked at him for a long moment. It's okay. He kissed her carefully, like she might break. She kissed him back less carefully, her hands finding his jacket, pulling him closer. She tasted like wine and something sweet, and she fit against him in a way that made him forget they were standing in the cold by the water. When they broke apart, she was smiling. That was nice, she said. Just nice? Really nice. Better than nice. I'm bad at this. You're not bad at this. I haven't done this in a really long time. The dating thing, the caring thing. Me neither. So we're both disasters. Apparently. She laughed and kissed him again, and this time Adrian let himself believe that maybe this could work. Maybe the gap between their lives wasn't too wide to cross. Maybe honest and real and scared was enough to build something on. They stood there until they were both shivering despite his coat around her shoulders. Adrian drove her home reluctantly, neither of them saying much, but the silence was comfortable now instead of awkward. At her building, he walked her to her door. In the ugly hallway with the flickering light and the faint smell of curry, Clara turned to face him. Thank you for tonight, she said. For all of it. Thank you for saying yes. Can we do this again? Yes. Tomorrow if you want. I work until 6 tomorrow. Then 6:30 or 7 or whenever you're free. You're really not going to get bored of me? Ask me in 50 years. Clara's eyes went soft. That's a long time. Yeah, it is. She kissed him one more time, quick and sweet, then slipped inside her apartment before he could say anything else. Adrian stood in that hallway for a full minute after her door closed, trying to process what had just happened. He'd gone on a date. A real date with someone he actually cared about. Someone who saw him as a person instead of a bank account or a connection. His phone buzzed. Text from Mia. Did you have fun? Did you kiss her? Mrs. Chen says I have to go to bed, but I'm not tired. Adrian smiled and texted back. Yes, yes, and go to bed anyway. Love you, butterfly. Love you more. Can Clara come to breakfast tomorrow? We'll see. Bed. Now. Fine. But only because I like her. Adrian walked back to his car feeling lighter than he had in months. The board meeting, Charles's accusations, the stress of the company, all of it felt distant and manageable. He had a daughter who was happy. He had a woman who made him feel real. He had a life that was messy and complicated and not what anyone expected. And for the first time since Sarah died, that felt like enough. Clara woke up the next morning to 17 missed calls from her mother and a text from Shanice that just said girl in all caps followed by 6 question marks. She ignored her mother's calls and texted Shanice back, coffee, now. I'll tell you everything. They met at the diner where Dolores worked, the same place Clara had hidden out that first night after the gala. Dolores took one look at Clara's face and brought 2 coffees without being asked. You got laid, Shanice said immediately. I did not. Then why do you look like that? Like what? Like someone who had a really good night. Clara felt her face heat. We just had dinner and talked, and he kissed me. And it was really good. Define really good. Like, forgot we were standing in the cold by the water good. Like, I wanted to invite him upstairs, but was too scared. Good. Shanice sat back, studying Clara like she was a puzzle that had just rearranged itself. You like him? Yeah. Like, actually like him. Not just attracted to him or impressed by his money. You like him. That's what I said. Clara, I've known you for 4 years. You don't like people. You tolerate them. You accommodate them. You make yourself smaller so they can be comfortable. But you don't let yourself actually want them. Clara wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. I know. So what changed? He asked me what I wanted. Not what I thought he wanted to hear or what was convenient or what made sense. He just asked what I wanted, and I didn't have an answer because nobody's ever asked me that before. And now? Now I think maybe I want this, whatever this is, even though it's terrifying and probably going to end badly and I have no idea what I'm doing. Shanice reached across the table and squeezed Clara's hand. Good. It's about time you wanted something just for you. Clara's phone buzzed. Text from Adrian. Mia wants to know if you can come to breakfast. No pressure, but she's making puppy dog eyes, and I'm apparently powerless against them. Clara showed Shanice the message. What do I say? You say yes, obviously, but I just saw him last night. Isn't that too much too fast? Since when do you care about rules? Since I started dating a billionaire single dad and have no idea what the protocol is. Shanice laughed. There is no protocol. Just say yes if you want to see him. Say no if you don't. Clara typed back. What time? The response was immediate. Whenever you can get here. We're at the hotel still. Give me an hour? Perfect. Clara finished her coffee and went home to change. She stood in front of her closet for 20 minutes, trying to figure out what you wore to breakfast with a man you'd kissed the night before and his daughter who thought you were cool because you believed dragons could be purple. She settled on jeans and a sweater that Shanice had bought her last Christmas, the soft gray one that Clara never wore because it felt too nice for her regular life. Today felt like a day for two nice things. The bus was late. Clara paced at the stop, checking her phone every 30 seconds, like that would make it arrive faster. When it finally came, she spent the entire ride second-guessing her decision to say yes. What if Mia didn't actually want her there and Adrian was just being polite? What if she was intruding on their morning routine? What if last night had been good because it was just the two of them, and adding Mia back into the equation would make everything awkward? She was still spiraling when she knocked on their suite door. Adrian answered wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt that had what looked like maple syrup on it. His hair was sticking up in the back. Hey, he said, and his smile was so genuinely happy to see her that Clara's anxiety quieted slightly. Hey, sorry, am I early? You're perfect. Come in. Warning though, Mia's in a mood. What kind of mood? The kind where she's decided to make pancakes by herself and refuses to let me help. Clara stepped inside to find the suite's small kitchen area in complete chaos. Mia stood on a chair in front of the stove, wearing an apron that was 3 sizes too big, wielding a spatula like a weapon. There was flour on every surface. The pancakes in the pan were smoking slightly. I can do it myself, Mia was saying to Mrs. Chen, who stood nearby with her hands clasped and an expression of barely controlled panic. I know you can, sweetheart, but maybe let me just... No, Clara is coming and I want to make her breakfast and I can do it. Clara's here, Adrian said. Mia turned so fast she almost fell off the chair. Clara! Hey, Mia, those pancakes smell amazing. They're a little burnt, but only a little. Burnt parts are the best parts, Mia beamed. Mrs. Chen looked at Clara like she'd just performed a miracle. Adrian was trying not to laugh. Can I help? Clara asked. Yes, but not too much. I'm still doing most of it. Clara washed her hands and joined Mia at the stove. The pancakes were, in fact, very burnt, but Clara just flipped them and adjusted the heat and showed Mia how to pour the batter in a circle without asking if maybe they should start over. Adrian watched them from the doorway, coffee mug in hand, looking rumpled and content. You're good with her, he said quietly. She makes it easy. They managed to make a batch of pancakes that were only slightly burnt. Mia insisted on serving them herself, carefully carrying plates to the table with intense concentration. Mrs. Chen excused herself once everything was under control, giving Clara a grateful look on her way out. So, Mia said, digging into her pancakes, did you and Daddy have fun last night? Mia, Adrian said. What? I'm just asking. We had a really nice time, Clara said. Did he take you somewhere fancy? Pretty fancy. Did he act like a gentleman? Clara caught Adrian's eye. He looked embarrassed. Very much a gentleman. Good, because if he was rude, I was going to have a talk with him. I appreciate that. They ate breakfast while Mia talked about school and her upcoming science project about the solar system and how she'd decided to make Jupiter extra big because it was her favorite planet. Why is Jupiter your favorite? Clara asked. Because it has the biggest storm in the whole solar system, the Great Red Spot. It's been going for like 400 years. That's a long time for a storm. I know. Miss Rodriguez says it's because Jupiter is so big and there's nothing to stop the storm. It just keeps going. Clara thought about that. A storm that had been raging for 400 years because there was nothing to stop it. She wondered what that felt like, to be all chaos and energy with no resistance, just endlessly turning. After breakfast, Mia wanted to show Clara her collection of rocks that she'd been gathering from different places. Each one had a story, this one from the park, this one from school, this one from the beach they'd visited last summer. This one's my favorite, Mia said, holding up a smooth gray stone. Daddy and I found it the day Mommy's birthday would have been. We went to her favorite spot, and this was just sitting there, and Daddy said maybe it was a sign that she was still watching over us. Claire's throat went tight. She glanced at Adrian, who was looking out the window with an expression that was carefully neutral. "That's a really special rock," Claire said. "Yeah, I keep it in my pocket sometimes when I'm sad. Does it help?" "Kind of. It reminds me that people can still be with you even when they're not here anymore." Mia put the rock back carefully in its spot. "Do you have anyone like that? Someone who's gone but still with you?" Clara thought about her father, whoever he was, about her grandmother who died when Clara was 12, the only person who'd ever made her feel chosen, about all the versions of herself she'd left behind trying to become someone acceptable. "Yeah," she said. "I do." Mia seemed satisfied with that answer. She went back to organizing her rocks by size, humming something under her breath. Adrian came over and sat next to Clara on the couch. "Sorry about that. She doesn't have much of a filter." "I like that about her. She's honest. Sometimes too honest." "There's no such thing." He looked at her like he wanted to say something but wasn't sure how. Before he could figure it out, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his expression hardened. "I have to take this. I'll be quick." He stepped into the bedroom and closed the door. Claire could hear his voice, low and tense, but couldn't make out words. Mia came and sat next to Clara. "That's probably Uncle Charles. Daddy's been fighting with him a lot." "About work stuff?" "Yeah. Uncle Charles thinks Daddy should care more about money, but Daddy says money doesn't matter if you're miserable." "Your dad's a smart man." "I know, but sometimes I think he's sad anyway. Like, he does all the right things, and he's still tired all the time." Mia looked up at Clara with eyes too old for her face. "Do you think Clara makes him less tired?" The question caught Clara completely off guard. "I don't know, maybe." "I think you do. He smiles different when you're here, like he's not forcing it." Clara didn't know what to say to that. She was saved from having to answer by Adrian coming back out of the bedroom. He looked frustrated. "Everything okay?" Clara asked. "Just work. Charles is pushing for another board meeting next week." Adrian ran his hand through his hair. "Sorry, this is supposed to be a nice morning, and I'm bringing work into it. It's your life. You don't have to apologize for it. Most people get tired of hearing about my problems." "I'm not most people." Adrian sat down on her other side. For a moment, the three of them just sat there on the couch, Adrian, Mia, and Clara. And it felt natural in a way that scared Clara, because natural meant comfortable, and comfortable meant she could get used to this, and getting used to things was dangerous. "Can we go to the park?" Mia asked. "All of us?" Adrian looked at Clara. "You don't have to." "I'd like to," Clara said, surprising herself. They bundled up and walked to the park 3 blocks from the hotel. It was cold but sunny, and the leftover snow from earlier in the week had mostly melted except in the shaded spots. Mia ran ahead to the playground while Adrian and Clara walked slowly behind. "This is weird, right?" Adrian said. "Having you here. Doing normal family stuff." "Do you want me to leave?" "No, the opposite. That's what makes it weird. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. For you to realize this is too complicated or too much or not what you signed up for." "What did I sign up for?" "I don't know. Dinner, maybe a few dates, not weekend breakfasts and park trips with my kid." Clara watched Mia climb the jungle gym with fearless confidence. "What if I want the breakfasts and park trips?" "Then you're crazier than I thought." "Probably." They found a bench where they could see Mia but still talk. Adrian sat closer than necessary, their shoulders touching. "Charles wants to force a vote on Singapore," Adrian said. "He's convinced he can get enough board members on his side to override my decision." "Can he do that?" "Technically, yes. If he gets enough votes, he can push it through even if I'm against it." "What happens then?" "Then I either go along with it or I make a big enough stink that it becomes a media circus. Neither option is great." "What do you want to do?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment. "I want to tell them all to go to hell. Walk away from the whole thing. But I can't because it's not just my company. It's 4,000 employees who depend on those paychecks. It's investors who trusted me with their money. It's Mia's inheritance." "Is that what you want? To walk away?" "Sometimes. When I'm tired and everything feels like too much. But then I think about my father and how he let the company consume everything else in his life, and I don't want that either. I want to find some middle ground where I can be a good dad and still run the company responsibly." I think you're already doing that. You haven't seen me at 3 in the morning when I'm going over reports and drinking cold coffee and wondering if I'm making all the wrong choices. Everyone feels that way at 3 in the morning. That's when all your worst thoughts seem reasonable. Adrian smiled slightly. What are your worst 3 in the morning thoughts? That I'm never going to be more than what I am now, that I wasted my potential, that I'm going to end up like my mom, alone and bitter and blaming everyone else for how my life turned out. You're nothing like that. How do you know? You barely know me. I know enough. He turned to look at her directly. I know you're kind to kids who aren't yours. I know you show up for people even when it costs you. I know you're honest even when lying would be easier. That's not someone who's wasted their potential. That's someone who's survived despite everything. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. You make me sound better than I am. I don't think so. I think you've spent so long being invisible that you forgot what you look like when someone actually sees you. Before Clara could respond, Mia came running over, breathless and pink-cheeked. There's a dog, she announced. A really big fluffy one. Can we go say hi? They spent the next hour at the park. The dog turned out to be a golden retriever named Murphy, whose owner was happy to let Mia pet him. They walked around the pond, fed some ducks with bread that Mia had insisted on bringing, and sat on the swings while Mia tried to teach Clara the proper technique for swinging as high as possible. It was normal and mundane, and Clara couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this settled. On the walk back to the hotel, Mia held both their hands, swinging between them. Clara caught Adrian's eye over Mia's head, and he smiled, and something in Clara's chest expanded. This was dangerous, this feeling of belonging, because belonging meant having something to lose. Back at the suite, Mia announced she needed to work on her science project. Adrian set her up at the table with her materials while Clara started cleaning up the breakfast dishes. You don't have to do that, Adrian said. I know, but I want to. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, the kind of quiet that didn't need to be filled. Mia hummed while she worked on her solar system. Adrian answered some emails. Clara washed dishes and tried not to think about how easy this felt. Her phone rang. Her mother. Again. Clara stepped into the bedroom to answer it, already regretting the decision. Finally, her mother's voice came through, sharp and familiar. I've been trying to reach you for 2 days. I've been busy. Too busy for your own mother? What do you need, Mom? That's nice. Can I just call to check on my daughter? You can, but you usually don't unless you need something. There was a pause. Derek's car broke down. He needs it for work and we don't have money for the repairs. How much? $800. Clara closed her eyes. She had maybe $1,000 in her account right now. Rent was due in 2 weeks. I can't. What do you mean you can't? I mean, I don't have it. I'm barely covering my own bills. You're working full time. How do you not have $800? Because I live in an expensive city and make minimum wage, and I had to cover my own rent when you borrowed money last month that you never paid back. I told you I'd pay you back. When? You've been saying that for 6 months. Her mother's voice went cold. I raised you alone, gave up everything for you, and this is how you repay me? I've been giving you money for years, Mom. I dropped out of college to help with your bills. I've covered your rent, your utilities, your boyfriend's mistakes. When is it enough? When did you become so selfish? The word hit like a slap. Clara had heard it before, many times. Anytime she tried to set a boundary or say no or prioritize her own needs. Selfish, like wanting to survive, was a character flaw. I can't do this anymore, Clara said quietly. Can't do what? This, where you only call when you need something, where I'm only valuable if I'm useful. I can't keep setting myself on fire to keep you warm. Where's this coming from? Did someone put these ideas in your head? Nobody put ideas in my head. I'm just tired, Mom. I'm tired of never being enough, of giving everything and it still not mattering. If that's how you feel, then fine. Don't help me. I'll figure it out myself like I always do. Okay. Okay? That's all you have to say? What do you want me to say? I want you to remember who was there for you when nobody else was, who fed you and clothed you and kept a roof over your head. You were there, and I'm grateful, but that doesn't mean I owe you my entire life. Her mother hung up without saying goodbye. Clara stood there holding her phone, shaking slightly. When she came back out, Adrian took one look at her face and stood up. What happened? Nothing. Just my mom. Clara, I said no to her. For the first time in my life, I actually said no. Clara laughed, but it came out wrong. And now I feel like the worst person in the world. Adrian crossed to her and pulled her into a hug. Clara let herself lean into him, let herself take comfort from someone else instead of always being the strong one. You're not a bad person, Adrian said into her hair. You're allowed to have boundaries. Then why does it feel so awful? But this? Because you've been trained to think that taking care of yourself is selfish. But it's not. It's necessary. Clara pulled back to look at him. How did you do it? With your father? How did you stand firm when he tried to make you feel guilty? I stopped caring whether he approved of me. Started caring whether I approved of myself. Adrian's expression was serious. It wasn't easy, and it didn't feel good. But it was the only way I could become the person I wanted to be instead of the person he expected. I don't know if I'm that strong. You're stronger than you think. Mia appeared beside them, looking worried. Is Clara sad? A little, Clara admitted. Do you want to help with my project? That always makes me feel better when I'm sad. Clara smiled despite everything. Yeah, I'd like that. They spent the afternoon working on Mia's solar system. Clara helped her paint Jupiter's red spot while Adrian made styrofoam balls into planets. Mia narrated facts about each planet that she'd clearly memorized from school. It was exactly what Clara needed. Something simple and creative that didn't require her to think about her mother or money or the fact that she was falling for a man whose life was so different from hers that it should have been impossible. By the time the sun started to set, Clara realized she'd spent almost the entire day here, in Adrian's space with his daughter, doing normal family things. I should go, she said reluctantly. Stay for dinner, Adrian said. Please, we can order in. Clara wanted to say yes, but she also needed space to process everything that had happened today. The conversation with her mother, the ease of being with Adrian and Mia, the terrifying realization that she was getting attached. I can't tonight. I have work tomorrow and I need to get ready for the week. It wasn't entirely a lie, but it wasn't entirely the truth either. Adrian seemed to understand anyway. Okay, let me drive you home at least. I can take the bus. Clara, please. She agreed because arguing seemed harder than accepting. Mia hugged her goodbye, making Clara promise to come back soon. Adrian was quiet on the drive to her apartment. Did I do something wrong? He asked when they were halfway there. No, why? You're pulling away. I can feel it. Clara stared out the window. I'm not pulling away, I'm just trying to keep my head on straight. What does that mean? It means this is all moving really fast and I'm scared. Of what? Of everything. Of getting attached and then losing this. Of not being enough for you. Of Mia getting hurt if this doesn't work out. Of wanting something so badly that it becomes the thing that breaks me. Adrian pulled over, right there on the side of the street, and turned to look at her. I'm scared too, he said. I'm terrified. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. That's easy to say now. But what happens when this gets hard? When the newness wears off and you realize I'm just a broke hotel worker who can't fix her own problems, let alone help with yours. You think I care about money? Everyone cares about money. Not the way you think. Money solves some problems, but it creates others. And it doesn't fix the important things, like loneliness, like feeling invisible, like wondering if anyone would stick around if you lost everything. I don't have anything to lose. Yes, you do. You have yourself. That's more valuable than anything I have. Clara wanted to believe him, but years of disappointment had taught her that people said pretty things and then left anyway. I just need some time to think, she said finally. Adrian looked like he wanted to argue but didn't. He drove her the rest of the way home in silence. At her building, he walked her to the door like he had the night before. But this time, the energy was different, heavier. I'm not giving up on this, Adrian said. On us. I want you to know that. I'm not asking you to give up. But you're not asking me to stay either. Clara didn't have an answer for that. She kissed him quickly, before she could overthink it, and then went inside before he could see her cry. Upstairs, her apartment was empty. Shanice was out with whatever guy she was seeing this week. Clara sat on her bed in the dark and let herself fall apart. Because the truth was, she wanted this. Wanted Adrian and Mia and Sunday mornings making burnt pancakes. Wanted to be part of something instead of always on the outside looking in. But wanting things had never worked out well for her before. And she didn't know if she could survive losing this one if it fell apart. Her phone buzzed. Text from Adrian. Whatever you're thinking, whatever's making you scared, we can figure it out. Together. That's what this is supposed to be. Not you carrying everything alone. Clara stared at that message for a long time. Then she typed back. I'm not used to together. I know. But maybe that's something we can learn. Maybe. That's enough for now. Clara fell asleep with her phone still in her hand, and for the first time in weeks, she didn't dream about falling. She dreamed about flying instead. The week that followed felt like walking on ice that might crack at any moment. Clara went to work, came home, texted Adrian short responses that didn't invite conversation. He didn't push, but she could feel him waiting on the other side of her silence. On Wednesday, Shanice cornered her in the break room. You're being an idiot, Shanice said without preamble. Good morning to you too. Don't. I've watched you mope around here for 3 days looking like someone kicked your puppy. What happened? Clara told her about the conversation with her mother, about spending the day with Adrian and Mia, about the panic that had set in when she realized how badly she wanted something she was certain she'd lose. Shanice listened without interrupting. When Clara finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You know what your problem is? Shanice said finally. I'm sure you're going to tell me. You've convinced yourself that you don't deserve good things, that wanting them is setting yourself up for disappointment, so you sabotage it before anyone else can. I'm not sabotaging anything. Really? Because from where I'm sitting, you met a good man who actually sees you, who has a sweet kid who likes you, and instead of letting yourself have that, you're pushing him away because you're scared. Of course I'm scared. You've seen where I live. You know how much money I have. What happens when he realizes I can't keep up with his life? What happens when he doesn't care about any of that? Shanice leaned forward. Clara, listen to me. That man drove across town to have breakfast with you. He introduced you to his daughter. He told you he's scared too, but wants to try anyway. Those are not the actions of someone who's going to bail the first time things get hard. You don't know that. Neither do you. But you're deciding for him instead of letting him make his own choice, and that's not fair to either of you. Clara knew Shanice was right. That didn't make it easier. That night she lay in bed staring at her phone. Adrian had texted earlier. Mia keeps asking when you're coming back. I keep telling her you're busy. She doesn't believe me. Clara stared at those words until they blurred. Then she typed, I miss you both. His response came immediately. Then stop hiding. I'm not hiding. Yes, you are. And I get it. But hiding doesn't make the scary things go away. It just makes you lonely. Clara set her phone down and pressed her palms against her eyes. She was lonely. She'd been lonely for so long that it felt normal, like a low hum she'd learned to tune out. But spending time with Adrian and Mia had made her realize what she'd been missing. Connection. Not the superficial kind where people were nice because you served them drinks or cleaned their rooms. Real connection, where someone knew your messy parts and stayed anyway. Her phone rang. Adrian, not texting this time. She answered. Hi. Hi. His voice was tired. I'm sorry, I know you said you needed space, and I'm not trying to pressure you, but I can't just sit here and pretend I'm fine with you pulling away. I'm not pulling away, I'm just scared. I know, you've said that. But Clara, I need you to understand something. I've done the safe thing my whole life, made the responsible choices, followed the expected path, and it left me empty. Meeting you, spending time with you, letting myself want this, it's the first time in years I've felt alive instead of just going through the motions. Clara's throat was tight. What if I can't be what you need? What if you already are? You don't know me well enough to say that. I know enough. I know you're kind even when people don't deserve it. I know you show up for people even when it costs you. I know you make my daughter laugh and you don't treat her like she's in the way. I know that when I'm with you, I don't feel like I have to perform or prove anything. That's not nothing, Clara. That's everything. She was crying now, quietly, trying to keep her voice steady. I'm terrified of losing this. So am I, but I'd rather have this and risk losing it than never have it at all. When did you get so brave? I'm not brave. I'm just tired of being alone. And I think maybe you are too. Clara wiped her eyes. Yeah, I am. So stop hiding. Come back. Let me mess this up in person instead of over text. She laughed despite the tears. You're not going to mess it up. I might. I'm not perfect at this either, but we can figure it out together if you let me. Okay? Okay? Yeah, okay, I'll stop hiding. She could hear his relief through the phone. Tomorrow. Come to the hotel after work. We'll order terrible room service, and Mia will talk your ear off about her science project, and I'll probably say something awkward. But we'll be together, and that's what matters. Tomorrow, Clara agreed. Get some sleep, Clara. You too, Adrian. She hung up and lay there in the dark, feeling lighter than she had in days. Tomorrow she would go back. Tomorrow she would stop running from the thing she wanted most. Tomorrow she would choose to stay. The next day dragged worse than the previous ones, but for different reasons. Now Clara was anxious instead of avoidant. Checking the clock every 10 minutes like that would make time move faster. At 5:30, her supervisor called her into the office. Clara, I need to talk to you about something. Clara's stomach dropped. She'd been careful at work, hadn't let her personal life interfere with her job. But maybe someone had seen her with Adrian, made assumptions, reported it to management. Is there a problem? Clara asked. Her supervisor, Margaret, looked uncomfortable. Not a problem exactly, but there's been some talk about you spending time with Mr. Vale outside of work hours. I'm not doing anything wrong. It's not affecting my job. I know, and that's not what this is about. But Clara, you need to understand that Mr. Vale is a high-profile guest. If there are any complications, any accusations of impropriety, the hotel would have to take action. What kind of action? We'd have to remove you from servicing his suite, possibly reassign you to different floors entirely. Clara felt cold. You're telling me I can't see him. I'm telling you to be careful. The hotel has policies about fraternization with guests. Technically, you're not violating them because you're seeing him outside of work. But if anyone complains, if there's any suggestion that you're using your position to gain favor or that he's receiving preferential treatment, it becomes a problem. I would never... I know. But perception matters. And people talk. Margaret's expression softened slightly. I like you, Clara. You're a good worker. I don't want to see you lose your job over this. So I'm asking you to be smart about it. Clara left the office feeling shaken. She'd been so focused on her own fears about not being enough for Adrian that she hadn't considered the practical complications. That people would gossip, that her job could be at risk, that their different worlds weren't just about money, but about power dynamics and perceptions, and all the ways the world punished women for reaching above their station. She almost texted Adrian to cancel, almost retreated back into the safety of her small, lonely life. But then she remembered what he'd said. Hiding doesn't make the scary things go away. It just makes you lonely. So she finished her shift, changed out of her uniform, and took the bus to the hotel. She walked through the lobby with her head up, ignoring the looks from other staff members who'd clearly heard the gossip. Adrian answered the door before she'd finished knocking, like he'd been waiting. Hey, he said, and the relief on his face made something in Clara's chest crack open. Hey. Mia appeared behind him. Clara, you came back. Daddy said you would, but I wasn't sure because you were gone for so long, and I thought, maybe you decided we were too much. Never too much, Clara said, kneeling down to Mia's level. I'm sorry I was gone. I was just figuring some things out. Did you figure them out? I think so. Good, because I need help with the rings around Saturn. They keep falling off. They spent the evening working on the science project. Clara helped Mia attach the rings while Adrian ordered pizza and tried not to hover. When Mia finally went to bed, Adrian and Clara sat on the couch in the quiet. My supervisor talked to me today, Clara said, about us. Adrian's expression darkened. What did she say? That people are talking, that if there are any complaints about impropriety, I could lose my job. That's ridiculous. You're not doing anything wrong. It doesn't matter. The hotel has policies. And even if those policies are unfair, they exist. Then quit. Clara stared at him. What? Quit the hotel. Work somewhere else. Somewhere that doesn't punish you for having a life outside of cleaning rooms. It's not that simple. Why not? Because I need the money, Adrian. I can't just quit a job without having another one lined up. That's not how real life works for people like me. She saw him flinch at that. I could help, just until you find something else. No? Claire, I said no. I'm not taking money from you. That's not what this is. I'm not trying to buy you. I'm trying to help. I know, but if I take money from you, then everyone who's saying I'm using you for your wealth is right, and I won't give them that satisfaction. Adrian looked frustrated. So what do we do? I don't know. But we figure it out without you trying to solve all my problems with money. I'm not trying to solve your problems. I'm trying to make things easier for you. Some things can't be made easier. Some things you just have to live through. They sat in tense silence for a moment. Clara knew she was being stubborn, but taking money from Adrian felt wrong in a way she couldn't articulate. It would shift something between them, make her dependent in a way that would poison everything good. I'm sorry, Adrian said finally. You're right. I can't just throw money at this and make it go away. But I hate that you're being punished for being with me. I hate it too. But that's the world we live in. Your world and my world aren't the same, and pretending they are doesn't help anyone. So what do? We be careful. I'll talk to Margaret about getting reassigned to different floors so there's no conflict of interest. We keep seeing each other, but we're discreet about it at the hotel. And we figure out the rest as we go. That sounds exhausting. Welcome to my life. Adrian moved closer, taking her hand. I'm sorry this is so hard. I wish I could make it easier. You do make it easier, just by being here, by not running when things get complicated. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? I promise. They sat together in the quiet, fingers intertwined, both knowing that promises were easier to make than to keep, but choosing to believe anyway. The weekend came. Adrian's apartment was finally ready, the pipe fully fixed and everything cleaned up. He and Mia moved back home on Saturday morning. Clara helped them pack up the hotel suite, carrying boxes down to Adrian's car. You should come see the apartment, Mia said as they loaded the last box. It's way better than the hotel, and my room has glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. Clara looked at Adrian, who nodded. Come over, we can make dinner. Actual dinner, not room service. She wanted to say yes, but she also knew that seeing his apartment, being in his actual home, would make this all more real, would erase the last bit of distance she'd been maintaining. Okay, she said anyway. What time? 6? I'll send you the address. That evening, Clara took 2 buses and walked 4 blocks to reach Adrian's building. It was in one of those neighborhoods where doormen wore uniforms and the lobby had actual art on the walls, the kind of place where Clara would normally be delivering something, not visiting. The doorman called up to announce her. She rode the elevator to the 12th floor, heart hammering. Adrian opened the door before she knocked. Behind him, she could see an apartment that was somehow both elegant and lived in. Toys scattered across the carpet, books stacked on every surface, pictures of Mia at various ages covering one wall. Come in, Adrian said. Ignore the mess. We literally just moved back in. Mia grabbed Clara's hand and dragged her on a tour. Her room was painted light purple with white furniture and enough stuffed animals to stock a small zoo. The glow-in-the-dark stars were arranged in actual constellations. Daddy helped me put them up, Mia explained. We looked up what the real sky looks like and tried to match it. That must have taken forever. 3 hours. But it was fun. Do you want to see Daddy's room? Mia, I don't think... Adrian started. But Mia was already pulling Clara down the hall. Adrian's room was simpler. A large bed with rumpled covers. A dresser with a photo of Sarah on it. Windows overlooking the park. Clara looked at the photo. Sarah had been beautiful, smiling at the camera with Mia as a toddler in her arms. She looks happy, Clara said. She was, Adrian said from the doorway. Right up until the end. She never complained, never got bitter, just kept loving us even when everything else was falling apart. I'm not trying to replace her. I know, and I'm not asking you to. Sarah was Sarah, you're you. Both things can be true. They made dinner together, pasta with vegetables that Mia picked out and chicken that Adrian somehow managed not to burn. They ate at the kitchen table, Mia chattering about school, while Adrian and Clara kept catching each other's eyes and smiling. After dinner, Mia insisted on showing Clara her favorite movie. They ended up on the couch, Mia between them again, falling asleep halfway through just like she had at the hotel. Adrian carried her to bed. When he came back, Clara was standing by the window looking out at the city. It's a nice view, she said. Yeah, Sarah picked this place. She said she wanted Mia to grow up seeing trees and sky, not just concrete. She had good taste. In most things. Clara turned to face him. I'm sorry I've been so difficult. About the money thing, about pulling away. I know I'm not making this easy. Nothing worth having is easy. Adrian crossed to her. And you're worth it. All the complications, all the fear, all of it. You're worth it. How do you know? Because when I'm with you, I remember who I wanted to be before life got in the way. Because Mia lights up when you're around. Because for the first time since Sarah died, I can imagine a future that includes someone else. Clara felt tears threatening again. I don't know how to do this. How to let myself want something without waiting for it to be taken away. Me neither. But maybe that's something we learn together. You keep saying that. Together. Because it's true. I'm not asking you to figure this out alone. I'm asking you to let me be part of it. And when my world and your world clash, when people talk and it gets messy and complicated, then we deal with it. Together. Adrian took her hands. I'm not going to lie and say it'll be easy. Your boss is right that people will talk. My board members already think I'm making bad decisions. But Clara, I have spent my entire life making choices based on what other people think I should do. And it made me miserable. So for once, I'm making a choice based on what I want. And I want you. Even though I come with complications. Especially because of them, because they make you real. Not some perfect fantasy, but an actual person with fears and problems and a life outside of me. That's what I want. Something real. Clara looked at this man who'd chosen to walk away from business deals to talk about carrots with his daughter, who'd introduced her to his child and his home and his grief, who kept showing up even when she pushed him away. I want something real too, she said quietly. I'm just not used to getting what I want. Maybe it's time to get used to it. He kissed her then, soft and careful, like she was something precious. Clara kissed him back and let herself believe just for a moment that maybe this could work, that maybe wanting something was enough to make it happen. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. I'm still scared, she admitted. Good. So am I. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. You said that before. I meant it then too. Clara stayed until late, talking about nothing and everything. About Mia's upcoming parent-teacher conference. About the board meeting Adrian had next week. About Clara's plan to apply for jobs outside the hotel, places where dating a guest wasn't against policy. When she finally left, Adrian walked her down to get a car. He'd insisted on calling one, and she'd let him because the buses had stopped running and it was late and she was tired of fighting about money. In the car, Clara thought about what Shanice had said. About sabotaging good things before anyone else could. About deciding for Adrian instead of letting him make his own choices. She pulled out her phone and texted him. Thank you for not giving up on me. His response came quickly. Thank you for coming back. I'm going to keep coming back. Even when I'm scared. Even when it's hard. That's all I'm asking for. Clara fell asleep in the car and woke up when they pulled up to her building. She paid the driver with money Adrian had given her. She'd tried to refuse, but he'd put it in her hand and closed her fingers around it, and climbed the stairs to her apartment. Shanice was waiting, of course, with wine and questions. Clara told her everything, about the supervisor's warning, about Adrian's apartment, about finally letting herself believe that maybe this could work. I'm proud of you, Shanice said when Clara finished. For what? For choosing yourself. For the first time in forever, you're not making yourself smaller to accommodate someone else. You're just existing and letting him fit into that space instead of the other way around. It doesn't feel like choosing myself, it feels like choosing him. That's the thing about healthy relationships. Choosing someone else and choosing yourself aren't opposites. They're the same thing. Clara thought about that as she got ready for bed. About how loving someone who actually saw her didn't require her to disappear. How being chosen didn't mean giving up who she was. The next week was better. Clara got reassigned to different floors at the hotel, which solved the conflict of interest problem. She had dinner with Adrian and Mia twice. Started looking at job postings for administrative work that paid better than housekeeping. On Thursday, Adrian texted, "Can you come over tonight? I need to talk to you about something." Clara's stomach dropped. Nothing good ever started with, "I need to talk to you." She showed up at 7, anxiety making her hands shake. Adrian answered the door looking tired but not upset. Mia was at a friend's house for a sleepover. What's wrong? Clara asked immediately. Nothing's wrong. Come sit. They sat on the couch. Adrian took her hands. The board is forcing a vote on Singapore next week, he said. Charles finally got enough support. They're overriding my decision. Can they do that? Technically, yes. I'm the majority shareholder, but they can outvote me on major decisions if they have enough board members on their side. What are you going to do? I'm going to let them. Clara stared at him. What? I'm letting them vote. And if they approve Singapore, I'm stepping down. Adrian, I've been thinking about this for weeks, and I realized something. I don't want to run a company where I'm constantly fighting people who don't share my values, where every decision is a battle, where I have to choose between being the CEO they want or being the father and person I want to be. But it's your company. Your father built it. My father built a company that consumed his entire life and left him alone and bitter. I don't want that legacy. I want something different. What will you do if you step down? Adrian smiled slightly. I have some ideas. Smaller ventures. Things I can run myself without a board breathing down my neck. Maybe some consulting. The point is, I'll have control over my life instead of the life controlling me. And Mia? Mia will be fine. Better than fine, actually. She'll have a father who's present instead of exhausted, who chooses her every single time without having to fight for it. Clara felt something shift in her chest. You're really going to do this? I am, but I needed to tell you first, because this affects you too. How? Because if I step down, there will be press. People will want to know why. They'll dig into my life, try to find reasons, and they'll find you. Clara's hands went cold. Oh. I'm not trying to scare you, but I need you to know what you're signing up for. Dating a billionaire CEO is one thing. Dating a guy who walked away from a billion-dollar company is another. People will have opinions. They'll say I'm irresponsible, that I let a woman distract me, that I'm throwing away my father's legacy. Are you asking me if I can handle that? I'm asking if you want to. Because if this is too much, if you want to walk away before it gets messy, I'll understand. Clara looked at him. At this man who was willing to walk away from everything he'd inherited because it didn't align with who he wanted to be, who chose his daughter over quarterly earnings, who saw her as a person instead of a complication. I'm not walking away, she said. Clara, I'm not. You chose me even when it was complicated. The least I can do is choose you back. It's going to get ugly. Then it gets ugly. But we deal with it together, remember? Adrian pulled her close, and Clara let herself be held. Let herself believe that maybe love didn't have to be perfect to be real. That maybe choosing each other, even when it was hard, was enough. The board meeting happened on a Tuesday. Clara took the day off work and spent it pacing her apartment, checking her phone every 5 minutes. At 3 in the afternoon, Adrian called. It's done, he said. What happened? They voted to approve Singapore, 7-3. Charles looked smug the entire time. And I told them I was resigning effective immediately, that they could run the company however they wanted, but they'd be doing it without me. How did they react? Charles looked like I'd slapped him. Patricia tried to talk me out of it. A few others just stared. I don't think they believed I'd actually do it. Are you okay? I'm terrified and relieved and free for the first time in years. His voice cracked slightly. I walked out of that boardroom, and instead of feeling like I'd lost something, I felt like I'd finally found it. Found what? Myself. The version of me that exists outside of other people's expectations. What happens now? Now I go pick up Mia from school. And tonight, if you're free, we celebrate. Celebrate what? The rest of our lives. Clara smiled through tears. I'm free. Then come over, 6 o'clock. Bring nothing but yourself. She arrived at 6 with Shanice's good wine and her heart in her throat. Mia answered the door, grinning. Daddy quit his job, she announced. He says it means we get to spend more time together. That's wonderful. And he says you're staying for dinner, and probably forever if you want. Clara looked past Mia to where Adrian stood in the kitchen, looking nervous and hopeful and more real than she'd ever seen him. Forever's a long time, Clara said. Is that a no? Adrian asked. That's a let's start with tonight and see where it goes. They had dinner. Then Clara helped Mia with homework while Adrian cleaned up. Then Mia went to bed and Clara and Adrian sat on the couch in the quiet. "I need to tell you something," Clara said. "Okay. I've spent my whole life feeling temporary. Like I was just passing through other people's lives, but never actually part of them. And it made me careful, made me protect myself by not wanting things too badly. I know. But I want this, you and Mia, and whatever comes next. I want it even though it scares me, even though I don't know how to do it right." Adrian turned to face her fully. "Clara Bennett, I love you. I love that you believe dragons can be purple. I love that you stood up to your mother even when it hurt. I love that you let Mia fall asleep on your shoulder. I love that you're honest even when it costs you. I love you exactly as you are, complications and all." Clara felt tears spill over. "I love you too. Even though you're stubborn and terrible at cooking and make bad decisions about billion-dollar companies, especially because of those things, especially because of them." He kissed her, and it tasted like promise and hope and all the things Clara had stopped letting herself want. When they broke apart, she said, "I'm still going to mess this up sometimes, get scared, and pull away. And I'm going to try to fix things with money when I should just listen. We're going to fight, probably, and it's going to be hard, definitely. But we're doing it anyway?" "Yeah, we're doing it anyway." Clara stayed that night, and the next night, and the one after that. Within 2 weeks, she'd unofficially moved in, her few belongings scattered among Adrian's expensive furniture like proof that two different worlds could occupy the same space. She found a new job as an administrative assistant at a nonprofit. It paid better than the hotel and didn't have policies about who she could date. Adrian started consulting for smaller companies, working from home, so he could be there when Mia got off the bus. The press found out eventually. There were articles about the billionaire who'd walked away from his empire. Speculation about his reasons. Photos of Clara leaving his building, accompanied by commentary about gold diggers and bad influences. It hurt. Clara won't pretend it didn't. Reading strangers' opinions about her worth, her motives, her relationship. But Adrian had been right. They dealt with it together. He released a statement saying his personal life was private and his professional decisions were his own. Clara held her head high and kept living her life. Mia's science project got first place at the school fair. Clara was there to see her accept the ribbon, standing next to Adrian while Mia beamed with pride. "That's my family," Mia told anyone who would listen, pointing at Clara and Adrian. "They helped me build it." Clara's mother called once more, asking for money. Clara said no and suggested therapy instead. Her mother hung up angry. They haven't spoken since. It still hurts sometimes, but Clara is learning that loving someone doesn't mean setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. 6 months after that first gala, Clara and Adrian got married in a small ceremony at the park, where they'd taken Mia that first Sunday. Mia was the flower girl and cried happy tears. Shanice was Clara's maid of honor and gave a speech about Clara finally choosing herself. Adrian's vows included a promise to never make her feel invisible, and Clara's included a promise to stop hiding when things got hard. They're not perfect. They fight about money sometimes. Clara still struggles to accept help even when she needs it. Adrian still tries to fix things with solutions when Clara just needs him to listen. Mia has bad days where she misses her mom, and Clara doesn't know how to help. Clara has bad days where the old fears creep back in, and she wonders if she deserves this. But they show up for each other. Every single day, they choose to stay. And slowly, Clara is learning that love doesn't have to be earned through perfection, that being chosen isn't about being worthy enough. It's about finding someone who sees your messy, complicated, imperfect self and decides that's exactly what they want. On their first anniversary, Adrian surprised her with a trip to the waterfront where they'd had their first kiss. They stood at the same railing, watching the city lights reflect on the water. "Do you ever regret it?" Clara asked, "walking away from the company?" "Not even once." "Do you regret saying yes to pancakes that first morning?" "That depends. Are the pancakes still burnt?" "Always." "Then no. No regrets." They stood there in the cold, wrapped in each other, watching other people's lives move around them. A year ago, Clara had been invisible, working a job that barely paid her bills, convinced that wanting more was dangerous. A year ago, Adrian had been drowning in a life that looked successful but felt empty. Now they were here, messy and imperfect and choosing each other anyway. Because that's what love was. Not the perfect story where everything worked out smoothly. The real story, where two broken people decided to be broken together, and somehow that made them whole. Mia was waiting at home, probably still awake even though she was supposed to be in bed, ready to demand details about their romantic evening. Tomorrow, Adrian had a meeting with a startup he was consulting for. Tomorrow, Clara had a presentation at work that made her nervous. Tomorrow, they'd make burnt pancakes and fight about whether Mia needed to eat more vegetables and figure out how to pay bills and live their lives. But tonight, they had this: the water and the lights and each other. And that was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.